All right, welcome everyone. In this briefing, we're going to dive into a therapeutic model that's really making waves in psychiatric research. We're talking about psilocybin-assisted psychotherapy, and more specifically, its incredibly powerful connection to what are known as mystical type experiences. So let's start with the central question that's driving all of this. Could a single session really fundamentally change a patient's entire relationship with their mental illness? I mean, just think about that. For those of us working with patients who are complex, who are treatment resistant, that's a pretty massive question, right? And that's exactly why this isn't just some academic exercise. We're all too familiar with the limits of polypharmacy, and we're constantly on the lookout for something more effective. It's that real-world, clinical pressure that's making us take a very serious second look at psychedelic-assisted models. Okay, so how did we get here? How did a substance with such a long and, let's be honest, complicated history find its way back into mainstream, serious clinical investigation? Well, this quote right here, it's from the 2006 paper that really kicked the door open. Roland Griffiths and his team at Johns Hopkins, they showed with real scientific rigor that you could safely bring about these profound experiences in a controlled lab setting. And here's the most important part. These experiences led to lasting positive effects. Honestly, that study pretty much single-handedly sparked the modern renaissance in psychedelic research we're all seeing today. And this is a huge shift in how we think about this stuff. For us as clinicians, this is probably the most important takeaway. The therapeutic benefit isn't just a simple matter of pharmacology. It seems to be directly tied to the quality and the depth of the patient's own subjective experience during that session. So that begs the question, right? What exactly is a mystical type experience anyway? I get that it can sound pretty fuzzy, but it's really important to know that in a clinical context, this isn't some vague concept. Researchers have actually pinned it down with very specific, measurable characteristics. So at its core, it's a state of consciousness that feels fundamentally different from our normal everyday reality. The two big hallmarks are this incredibly powerful sense of connection, of unity, and this feeling of profound sacredness or awe. And these are the components they're actually measuring with questionnaires after the sessions. They're looking for things like a sense of unity with the world, intense feelings of awe and joy, time feeling like it's stretching or disappearing, and then there's ineffectibility. That's the classic one, right? It's when a patient says, "Doc, I just don't have the words for it." And all of this is usually wrapped in this powerful feeling that what happened was deeply, profoundly real and meaningful. This leads us to the million-dollar question. How does an experience like this translate into lasting change for something like depression or addiction? Well, the leading hypothesis connects it directly to a concept we're all very familiar with in therapy: psychological flexibility. Here's the proposed arc. First, the psilocybin helps occasion that mystical experience. Then, that experience seems to just shake up the snow globe. It disrupts those rigid, ruminative, stuck thought patterns we see all the time. This creates a state of much greater psychological flexibility. And it's in that flexible state that patients can begin to reframe their whole story, their illness, their past, their identity, and it's that reframing that seems to drive the long-term improvements. Now, this is so critical to understand. The psilocybin session is not a magic bullet. It's the catalyst. Think of it as what pries opens a window. It creates a temporary period where the mind is just more malleable, more open. And that makes all the therapeutic integration work that follows so much more effective. Of course, for any of us as clinicians, the first and most important questions are about safety and how you actually do this in practice. And this is where the ideas of set and setting are not just buzzwords, they are absolutely everything. Okay, proper patient screening is without a doubt the single most critical safety measure. You're looking for candidates who are motivated and open-minded. But the exclusion criteria are strict and non-negotiable. Any personal or family history of psychosis or bipolar disorder is an absolute contraindication. And it's also crucial to look at their current medications. Many common psych meds can't be combined with psilocybin, so you're looking at a carefully managed washout period. And we have to be really clear-eyed about the risks. These sessions can bring up intense fear, anxiety, even paranoia. But the clinical framing here is so important. We call them challenging experiences, not bad trips. Why? Because data actually suggests that when a patient can confront and move through that difficult material, it can be powerfully therapeutic. So the role of the guide isn't to stop the difficulty, but to provide support and help the patient navigate it, helping to reduce the duration of those tough moments. Success here is really built on meticulous prep work. It all starts with building a deep, trusting rapport between the patient and the therapeutic team over several sessions. The room itself has to be comfortable and feel totally safe. A huge piece of this is coaching the patient to adopt a mindset of surrender, of just letting go. And then you're using tools like an eye mask and a carefully curated music playlist to help them focus inward. Finally, and this is key, you're planning for the integration work from the very beginning so those insights from the session can actually take root in their life. So this all brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? The evidence is getting stronger, the mechanisms are becoming clearer, but how do we actually integrate a therapy that's this deeply personal and support-intensive into our current healthcare systems? That's the huge challenge ahead of us, and it raises all sorts of questions about training, cost, and infrastructure that we as a profession really need to start tackling as this research moves forward.